the first time we met,
Uh-huh.
was that with Eric when you guys came
And
down?
Bill. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bill came down to BYU. Yes.
Yeah, Bill had identified this article in Spine, the Spine Journal, on adjacent segment issues and motion, and was like, this is a good article. And then, oh my goodness, this professor is from BYU. And so we sort of said, well, we got to go meet this guy. And we sort of came in, walked up and sat down in your office, and that was several years ago now.
It was.
Yeah. So it's been fun to see some of these projects, which do take some time. Anyway, thanks for presenting this morning, though. That was good. It was different than some of our other presentations, but different in a good way, because it's nice to have a perspective coming from what you do and mix it into things that we're doing, and I think it generates a lot of good thoughts. And anyway.
Well, I know I certainly benefit the other way.
Oh, good.
From having the clinical perspective on things, it changes my perspective on my research, the understanding of what's maybe most important that I'm doing versus things that maybe are important academically, but maybe have less application. So I think it's really helpful.
I think it's good. It's not necessarily in our situation where we're all in one big academic medical center, which I think is a good model. But in our situation, we've got a lot of great community-based providers, and then now a few institutions devoted to education, some of them specifically in medicine with the new medical school, and we have Rocky Mountain University, and then Brigham Young University, which obviously teaches a lot of things, but there's some good pockets of clinically relevant departments. So I think it's been wonderful and good collaborative opportunity. You mentioned in the talk that there's some correlations between lower back pain and other kinds of things that people do or habits they have. What did you find surprising or interesting about some of these correlations with lower back pain?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times we confound a lot of things. Like we build a stereotype of what someone with chronic low back pain is going through. Like we build a statistical average person, right? Statistically, this person with low back pain probably has, you know, this level of sleep deprivation, they're at this level of activity, but all those are based on averages. And what we're seeing is that averages don't tell the story very well, that each person is unique, but that there's groups of people that kind of have similar characteristics, and some of them defy those expectations. Like, for example, activity level is something that we typically say someone with chronic low back pain does not have a high activity level, but that's just not true.
Well, and the other thing we might say is, well, you just need to be more active.
Correct.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that could be very discouraging to a patient that has lower back pain and they are active, and then their doctor says, well, you just need to be more active, right?
Yeah, so, and we saw that in our data, that there wasn't a tight correlation. It was interesting, just yesterday I was reading a paper that had come out from an Australian group, the Outback study, AUT, right? But anyway, that group there, they also had found a lot of the things that we typically think of as being healthy habits and engaged things had no correlation at all with the actual incidence of pain and the severity of them. People engaged in healthy behaviors were still having all this pain, but what it did change was their engagement with the medical providers. That they, if they were engaged in this physical activity, they weren't going to see their doctor. They were out doing stuff. And I don't know if that's good or bad. They were still experiencing pain, but it certainly defies a stereotype and helps us to understand that the limited engagements maybe that we get with between a patient and a healthcare provider maybe don't tell us the whole story.
Mm-hmm. So in medical school, there was, and even today, there's sort of this idea of non-specific lower back pain. Well, we don't know what it is. How does understanding of motion, because you've got a device that allows us to understand motion, add to our understanding of lower back pain?
Yeah, see, I think we all hate that term, right? I mean, that's the worst diagnosis ever.
Yeah, you've got lower back pain, you and everybody else, and we don't know what to do about it.
So I think the whole idea is to get past the information we currently have and add in an additional piece of information that we hope will tear away part of that group that we now lump into non-specific, or and just say, oh, now we have some specificity. This is going to help this group.
Yeah, what we do have now is we have X-ray, which can give us a little bit of understanding of motion. It's fairly crude, but it is something. And then we have MRI, which is good for looking at injuries to the disc. It's good for seeing spinal stenosis, and is good for those kinds of things. Both of them take very little, there's very little information about motion. And so I think that having the motion into the mix could be very powerful.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, my training as a mechanical engineer says motion is everything. Like you have to know the motion in order to understand how a mechanism is functioning, right? But quantifying that in a way that's surgically and clinically relevant, and in a way that it translates. You know, we all look at things and identify the way. We actually have an amazing computer in our head that lets us see ways that people move differently and behave differently. But taking that and turning that into clinically useful information can be challenging. And we're hoping this does that, takes that motion and makes it objective, actionable data.
How does machine learning play into this? Because you talked a little bit about machine learning, and that caught my attention because, as most of us know, that's become something that the technology is there to give us the ability to study and see patterns in large data sets that are meaningful. What do you think that's going to do for us?
Well, I think it goes back to what I was just saying, that this machine learning is based on this idea of pulling in all these features that there's so many of them, it's difficult to make sense of them unless you have a really powerful analysis tool. And that's what machine learning is all about. But being able to take these features and turn them into something useful based on large amounts of data. So, little things like how fast somebody moves in and out of a particular motion, how quickly they stand up, what that first step is like after they get up. Those things, if someone's sitting in your office and you watch them doing those, might give you a clue, but individually it's just one piece of data that might be easily dismissed. Attached to a whole bunch of other little pieces of data, it allows us to form a picture that maybe gives us a more comprehensive understanding of what a particular patient is going through. So I think machine learning is fantastic. I am interested to know how clinicians view this idea, though, of, if I had a computer telling me how to teach my class, right, this will give you better outcomes, I don't know how easy it would be for me to kind of defer. I might be willing to try, but think maybe I've got lots of years of experience here that maybe tell me better. What kind of level of trust is required for a clinician to start changing practice based on a machine learning type of model that's a black box that just kind of says, try this.
Well, I think about watching an NFL game, and anymore they'll say, well, the analytics say that you should kick the field goal. Or even more than that, they'll say, if you kick the field goal at this junction, you're going to win the game 86% of the time. And if you go for it, you're going to win the game 79% of the time. That's super meaningful.
Yeah.
And if I have a patient in my office, and I've looked at their MRI, and I've looked at their x-rays, and their other data, and I now have some motion analysis, and I have some machine learning analysis that's taken all of that into consideration. And if I have that, and I am able to tell the patient, if we do this surgery, this is going to help you this percentage, or if we did this one. Because, for example, maybe the patient really does need a fusion, and the data could suggest that, I could suggest that, and then the patient gets to make a choice. And so it's really, the way I think it's going to be helpful is to have data-driven analytics allow us to make better choices.
Yeah.
And that's going to be really special, because if a patient knows, look, if I get this surgery, I have an 82% chance of reaching my goals, or I have a 6% chance of having a complication that I don't really want to have. And I get to make my decisions based on these risks and analysis and benefit analysis. And I think that taking into account motion will give us better data, better analytics, patterns that no clinician could ever fully comprehend. But just taking that information into the equation to make the decision, I think will make a big difference.
Yeah. Well, that's good to hear. I like that.
So keep up the good work. Appreciate you presenting, and love the ongoing collaboration on this project and many others. It's been wonderful, and appreciate all you do.
Thanks. Appreciate it too.